Hello, welcome to the Edge of the Box season preview by WhoScored.com. We've got 7 shows coming up before the season gets underway. We're going to look at 7 teams. The first one we're going to start with today is Arsenal. So this is an Arsenal-specific preview. I'm joined by Julien Laurens, broadcast legend. Everybody wants him on their show, and we've got him today. Julien, just want to explain your relationship with Arsenal a little bit, because obviously we've chosen you.
Going back quite a long time, when I moved over here in London, it was the 03-04 season, so the Invincibles. There was a lot of French players there. I mean, we say in France that Arsenal are a bit like a French club, to be fair, since the Arsene Wenger years. And obviously, for the people who know my wife and the family, she works for the club as well. So we are heavily Arsenal, family kind of house. And there's a lot of people I know there, of course, players and staff members, etc., etc. And it's a club that not only I like, but also I follow very, very closely.
Let's start with a brief look at last season. Top of the league for a high percentage of the season. Fell away, obviously, a little bit at the end, but they were up against a machine in Manchester City. Despite the fact that they went from first to second and finished the season second, do you look back at it and say, that's still a really successful season? And the biggest thing, I guess, is that's massive progress from the year before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the most important for Arteta and the players and the club was that they wanted to see progress individually for some players to just get to the next level. And I think we saw that even for someone like Bukayo Saka, who was already very good before, but had an incredible season. Same with Martinelli, same with Odegaard, just to name those 3. But Ramsdale too, for example, even White, but also collectively and in the way Arsenal played, with the ball, without the ball, you clearly saw a lot of improvement, a lot of progress from last season compared to the season before. And of course, it's disappointing when you lead for so long not to win it. And I think everybody expected at some point Arsenal to drop some points, which is fine because all this kind of scenario was new to them. They just needed City also to lose points and to drop points. The problem was, as you said, City were a machine towards the end of the season. They with the treble, they might well be the greatest team in Premier League history, full stop, certainly the greatest manager. So it was always going to be difficult. In the end, I don't think there's any shame to be beaten by this Man City team, but a Pep Guardiola team like that with Erling Haaland leading the line. It's just that I think he feels a little bit better because Arsenal led for so long. But again, I think it was a big improvement. And now, in a way, this season coming up is even more important because it's not just that you want to keep improving, it's that you need to confirm what you did so well in the previous season.
Yeah, was last season the kind of first season that we've seen a team that's fully in the Mikel Arteta mould, do you think?
Yeah, completely. If you remember when he took over, they played that with the 3 at the back. I think he felt like in the short term he had to do something a little bit different to what he wanted to do, which is, a lot of what, let's say, Pep Guardiola is doing, for example. So we saw different things from Arsenal under him. And then I think when he got the squad that he wanted or close to it, when he got rid of the players that he wanted to get rid of, then slowly you started to see, even the season before that, when they finished 5th, when they narrowly lost to Spurs for the 4th place and the Champions League, you saw already a little bit of what he was doing. But last season was certainly the best example in terms of pressing and counter pressing, the intensity they played with, the way they started games. For most of the season and most of them, the way they defended on the front foot, very high line. It cost them at times, of course, but it was also very successful. And then, as we said before, to improve that way collectively and individually, as well as playing the way that Arteta wants them to play. And trust me, a lot of the drills, the training are just made for that, made to almost engrave all those principles into the players' minds, individually and collectively. They've worked really hard, and it was good to see during matches what they were practicing at training. And now, again, they need to step up even more to keep the progress, but also be better than what they were last season.
At this time last year, we were saying that Arsenal have had a good summer here. They've brought in 2 high-level players from Manchester City. They're building a young team. Perhaps this is the year they challenge to get a top 4 place. Obviously, they surpassed that. 12 months on, I think they've had another brilliant summer. They've made 3 really high-level signings, and not even bigger, but another massive thing for the club, Julien, is that they're getting these players tied down to long-term contracts as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the extensions are, in a way, maybe almost as big and as important as the new signings. To have Bukayo Saka signing a new deal, Aaron Ramsdale, William Saliba, which was not easy, which was maybe the one that dragged on for too long. I think Martin Odegaard is probably the next one as well. On top of Kai Havertz, Declan Rice, of course, who is the one that they really, really wanted, and then Jerry and Timber. This is all good because you keep the core of that team with more experience. And you said it was a really young team. It was the youngest team in the league last season. You kept that. You brought some experience. You brought some really talented players, some versatility defensively, offensively. You've got that. Even in midfield, I'm convinced that Declan Rice is probably almost could be as good as an 8 that he is as a 6 in a double pivot in the midfield 3. I think he can really do everything. So you've brought all that quality while keeping the quality that you've had before. And again, you can expect Bukayo Saka to be better next season because that's the way things go usually with those kind of players. Same with Odegaard, same with Martinelli. If Gabriel Jesus stays fit, if Zinchenko stays fit, if Saliba stays fit, then suddenly with all the quality that you have in the depth in your squads, everything becomes even more interesting from an Arsenal point of view.
Yeah, that depth's crept up now as well. I said to you before we came on, when you've had a good season and you're heading in the right direction, the last thing you go and do is buy 5 and 6 players. That's not how you build. What they've done so far by bringing in the 3 that they've done is they've brought in extra bits of quality, but they've also made the squad bigger because Xhaka's gone. Essentially, we expect Havertz to replace Xhaka.
Yeah.
You've then got Rice and Timber, who are new additions. That squad is now stronger by 2 than what it was last season, and it's 2 pieces of absolute quality in there. At the moment, Balogun's still there as well. Smith Rowe had a lot of the season injured. You'd expect Fabio Vieira to be better this season after having a season of getting used to Premier League football. So suddenly you look at that Arsenal squad, and I would say that's a very strong squad.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with you on the signings, on the numbers of signings too, because unless you sign players who are just for one position, which of course some are, like Erling Haaland, for example, can only play in one position, then maybe you need a bit more because I want my right back and I want a centre back and I want. But if you have players like Kai Havertz who can almost play anywhere in your front 3, plus also as a second striker, but maybe also in midfield, which is what Arteta is going to try to do with him. He's going to try to make him into that number 8. In Germany, they've always kind of compared him to Michael Ballack, or maybe not compare, but there's always been a thought in Germany that he had all the attributes to be a bit like Ballack, to play as an 8 and to be that kind of box-to-box engine with the technical ability. Ballack was a very technical player too, to play in that position. And I think this is the idea that Arteta has. If it works, it's great. If it doesn't work, then we can be a bit more critical later down the line and later down the season. But if you have the versatility of Timber, like he played left back against Barcelona, for example, he can play right back, he can play as a 6, he can play centre back, Havertz, we've just said, and Rice before, then suddenly you're right, you only need 3. And we were talking about Villa before, and you will have a preview on them anyway, but it's quite similar too. And I expect Newcastle to be like that. I expect United to be like that. 3 signings, probably not more. And for Arsenal, I think that was always the idea. Of course, it cost them a lot of money, them 3. That's fair enough. And you could have had 6 for the same amount of money, probably, but maybe not the same kind of versatility and talent that the 3 that they signed.
We look at Chelsea, who spent probably nearly £1 billion to finish 12th instead of 3rd. So sometimes buying a load of players doesn't work, does it? Let's talk a little bit about Julien Timber. There, you've just mentioned him. He's probably the signing I know the least about of the 3. You've just said his versatility is going to be massive. If he plays right back, for example, is he a step up from White, would you say, or are they about the same level?
It was the same with Lisandro Martinez the summer before, when in the end, Arsenal had Zinchenko and Martinez went to United. But I think Arteta loves the kind of Ajax mentality and the Ajax philosophy. And if you get a Timber or Lisandro Martinez, I mean Timber even more, but Martinez even joining later down his career, still had those principles in him of playing out from the back, all that kind of movement, all the intelligence that you need to play for Ajax, from the youth teams to the first team. I think Arteta loves that. And I think for the way he wants to play, especially if you're a defender, he kind of felt this is good for us. And then if on top of that he's a young player who can play in different positions, and again, I think I'm not even sure what Timber's best position is really, and we might find out through the season if he's right back, if he's a right centre back, if he's maybe a bit higher up on the pitch. I think there's an idea that with him you can do a lot of things when you have the ball. For example, you play him right back, and you can have Zinchenko coming inside as an inverted fullback if you want, with Rice in midfield, for example, like we saw a lot of last season, and then Tiber slots in and is your third centre back with Saliba and Gabriel, for example. You can play him and Saliba both as centre backs. You can play him as right back, but you don't have any inverted fullbacks. He's just going up and down that right hand side, because Ajax, you do that as well if you're a fullback for Ajax. He can also play, if Zinchenko is not playing, he can also be the inverted fullback, starting from the left-hand side and play inside with Rice. He offers you so many different options, and maybe he's not a starter straight away, because you would think that Arteta could keep the faith with White, Saliba, Gabriel and Zinchenko. But you wouldn't be surprised if he still plays a lot, because he's got all those options that he can bring, and Arteta can say, okay, we play, I don't know, let's say Villa this weekend, and they've got Moussa Diaby, who's going to be on their left-hand side, our right-hand side, just for the sake of it. I fancy Timber one-on-one with Moussa Diaby more than White. You can put him there. You want more of the ball in a game away somewhere, so let's put Timber at right back, but Zinchenko is out, so I will have him in midfield when we have the ball. All those things that you can't really do with White, that maybe you can do with Timber. And same with centre-back. He can step in from centre-back into midfield more than Gabriel can, for example. So I think it's a very clever signing. And again, we could do the same with Rice and with Havertz.
It is a clever signing, because when they lost Saliba at the back end of the season, and in fairness, Tomiyasu was out for a long time as well. I think he may have played games at that point had he been fit. They were lacking the quality to bring in, and they really fell away. But Timber just gives them that versatility across the back four, like you're saying, with Tomiyasu coming back as well. They suddenly just, the defence looks well set. Are Arsenal, if I had not criticisms, but if there's two areas overall you thought Arsenal could strengthen, is centre back one of them, and is centre forward one of them. That the lack of that real 20-30 goal a season man, or do you think Jesus can be that man?
So I think it's a very interesting debate on the number 9 position. I think in Arteta's mind, and a bit like what we saw again going back to City and Guardiola and the mentoring side of it. Before Haaland, certainly Arteta was part of a City staff and a City team that really was sharing the goals quite a lot between the two wingers, whoever was the number 9 or the fourth number 9, whoever was playing in midfield. This is new for them to have a Haaland with 36 Premier or 34 Premier League goals, whatever he had in the end. So I think in Arteta's mind, it would be great to have an Osimhen or maybe a Vlahovic or an Mbappe or Kane or Haaland. Of course it would. In all the pieces of the jigsaw, I think for him the most important was not the 9, because he knows that if you can get 15 goals from Saka, 15 from Martinelli, 15 from Jesus, 15 from Odegaard, 15 from Havertz, that's already a lot of goals. And I'm not saying that they're all going to score 15, but this is the idea. And we saw last season that worked to a certain extent, because of course they didn't win the title in the end, but we could not say that they lacked goals last season. Really, of course, it would have been better if Jesus got to 30, but he was also injured. I think this is the idea for now, and they're going to think we will share the goals. The danger can come from anywhere, and you don't have just a focal point in a big number 9 like an Osimhen, for example. Instead, it's hard to pick up Jesus in terms of marking. It's hard to pick up Saka and Martinelli when they all move around. If you have that fluidity as well with Havertz, plus Odegaard at the level that we saw last season, it's very difficult to defend against them. So I think this is very much the idea. And again, we will review the season at the end, and maybe it would have been a mistake not to have gone and signed someone. But I think the priority were the 3 kind of players or positions or both that we mentioned before. And again, I don't think then they could have gone and spent another 100 million on a striker that was not probably available anyway. And I think Arteta likes Jesus a lot, and what he can bring to that team as a starter as well, which I think is very important in terms of leadership.
It's the hardest position to get right in world football at the moment. To sort teams that want to sign a striker at the moment, like Manchester United, it's a struggle to get one through the door. It'd be interesting to see what does happen in the striker market in the rest of the summer. Let's talk a bit about Declan Rice. Obviously, the marquee signing of the summer. I think the biggest thing for me about the Declan Rice signing is 12 months ago, he would not touch Arsenal, would he? He wouldn't go there. The fact that they've gone and been able to sign him shows the astounding progress they've had over 12 months.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think the way Arteta sold him the project in a way, and the discussion that they had, which I think kind of blew Declan Rice's mind, also shows that this is, I think, a special manager. And I think he's got that kind of relationship with his squad and with his players, which is very important. I find Declan Rice completely underestimated in England. I don't know why, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't think people realize how good he is. I think, and I'm not saying that he's going to show at Arsenal because he's going to play in the Champions League, etc. I just think he's an incredible player, and really people have slept on him in England in terms of recognition and appreciating him for what he did at West Ham in a team that, you know, had David Moyes as a manager. Come on, and even with England, Gareth Southgate as a manager. I really expect Rice to fit so well in that team, to improve massively, to be a huge asset. And of course, you paid for it, and it's a premium price because he's an England international starter as well. Because there was a bit of a kind of a bidding war, let's put it that way, with City. I'm not sure exactly how much City really wanted him, but still, it doesn't matter. And I think, and I think for Arteta, it was really, again, in that big jigsaw, a very, very important piece that he felt he really needed to have.
I agree with you on Rice. I think there's more to his game than he's been able to show in his career so far. And I think if you put him in a team like Arsenal that play football the way they do, I think you're going to see all those extra things that he offers. I actually think you'll see, I know he'll be playing as a 6, but I actually think you'll see him pop up with more goals at Arsenal because they're a more free-flowing team. I think people look at the price and say, 100 million because he's English. I don't think so. I think it's 100 million because he's a hell of a player, and I think he'll fit perfectly with what Arsenal do, not only as a player, but as a person as well. Declan Rice comes across to me like, I've never met him. He comes across to me like such a good person, and I know Arteta puts a lot of credence on what someone is like as a person, and from that point of view, I think he'll fit in that dressing room straight away. And I also think he's got the character now to become a leader straight away, Julian.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think just finally on his position and him on the pitch, I think his starting position will be much higher than what, just to go back to strengthen your point on what he did at West Ham, the low block at West Ham for most of his time there won't be there. Arsenal, they're going to play such a high line and a high block. He will be playing much more higher on the pitch when they have the ball, even when they don't have the ball, because they're going to go and press really high, you would expect. So you're right, he's going to be in those positions to be able to score more goals than he did before. And then outside of the pitch, I think he's a leader. He's a born leader for me. And there's a difference being a leader at West Ham and being a leader in the Champions League team that is competing to win the Premier League and the Champions League, anything you want. But I think he can easily step up. And I think he's got, there's some charisma, there's great characteristics about him, about his character, and I think that's also very important, and that's also why they signed him.
I know you like your fantasy football. I think he might be worth a punt in fantasy football. I don't think he's that expensive. I do think he'll pop up with goals at Arsenal. So this isn't a fantasy football podcast, but if you do play FPL, a little bit of advice for you there from the person that finished bottom of all his fantasy leagues last season. If you want to take it, I had an absolutely wretched season, but I'm going to come back stronger this season. That's a good piece of advice there, I would say. Who do you think is going to be Arsenal's key man for the season, Julian?
It's hard to say. I think just because of the sharing duties, in a way, we said sharing goals, sharing leadership. I think sharing importance in you. I think if Martin Odegaard can have the same season that he had, or as good, or maybe even better, I wish him. Then last season, 15 goals, 10 assists, I think it was in the end, or something like that. Then I think he would be the key guy because he brings so much creativity. Every pressing and counter pressing starts with him. The running is incredible. I think people again overlook the running that he does and all those kind of that data side of his game, which is very, very important. He's one of the most intelligent players that you've ever met. So I think for me, maybe of all those pieces in the jigsaw, Rice and Havertz and Jesus and the two wingers, plus the defense, and Ramsdale also has a huge part to play. I think maybe Odegaard again would be the key man.
Hell of a player, Odegaard. Technically, so good. His numbers last season, goals and assists, goal contributions through the roof last season. Odegaard, one of those captains that probably isn't the most vocal, but just leads by example with what he does on the pitch. He's a hell of a player and someone I absolutely love watching. Is there a player who you think could be one to watch? Maybe one that people aren't expecting, someone who hasn't been a regular starter? Is there someone a bit more low key that you would say is one to watch this season for Arsenal?
Well, I mean, I can pick someone like Emile Smith-Rowe, for example, that you mentioned earlier, coming back from a very frustrating season, doing well with the England under 21, of course, which was huge for him. Not just the game time, but the performances, the goals, etc., and be in a winning squad like that would be great for him. I just don't know how much is he going to play. I don't even know if he will be part of the squad at the start of the season, but it's someone like him I would like to see. A Fabio Vieira just stepping up a little bit when because otherwise the starting 11, we say, okay, maybe White or Timber, but the rest, certainly at the start, we know it will be Ramsdale and then Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, and then Saka, Martinelli, and Jesus. So of those 11, we can't really pick someone and say, they're all stars and they're all big players for them. But if a 12th man or a 13th man, is that we say 13th man, or the two can step up a little bit when called upon, like a Smith-Rowe, like a Vieira, Balogun or Nketiah, whoever stays and whoever plays. Personally, I would like to see Balogun. I watched all his games last season in Ligue 1 with Reims. He was outstanding, really, for his age, the maturity of his running, the maturity of his first touches, always the good positioning. I really, really like him. Again, I don't know if he will still be part of the squad and how much he will play if he is. But there's someone like him, Vieira, Smith-Rowe, that also will be very important outside of that starting 11 that we mentioned.
Also, actually, the two signings they made in January, they had an impact when they arrived, but you think they'd be better now, getting a full, proper Arteta Arsenal pre-season. Jorginho and Trossard. Trossard especially was very good when he came in last season.
Yeah, Trossard especially, and for the fans who watched the friendly matches, for example, even if they were in the middle of the night, he scored 2 really good goals against Barcelona, played really well, played as an 8 at times too, so I think he can also bring maybe a bit of a different option and a bit of versatility to Arteta. But yeah, Trossard could be mentioned in the same way as the kind of super sub that we mentioned, or maybe the players who won't be the starting 11, but just below, who will get a lot of game time and will have to make the most of it and bring a lot to the team. So Trossard, it could be a really good season for him, even with the national team, considering it's a big transition for Belgium going into the Euros with a new head coach. He will have a big role to play for them as well, so he has to do well for Arsenal.
Right, let's have your predictions then, Julien. Where are Arsenal going to finish, and are they going to win any cups?
So I think there will be a trophy this season, for sure. I don't think it will be the Champions League. I think that's a bit early. Sorry, Arsenal fans. But I think there will be a trophy. I think they will compete and they will be right up there in the title race in the Premier League up until the end. They could well win it. I think they've got enough experience from what happened last season and the season before. So the 4th, 5th place with Spurs, the 1st and 2nd place with City, to get that kind of experience with them. I think the momentum and the confidence of what they did last season would be a huge asset as well. So I expect them to do well in the domestic cups, to do well in the league, very well in the league, potentially winning it, of course. They will be. I wouldn't be surprised if they do win the Premier League. The Champions League, I think might be a little bit early for this squad and for Arteta himself as a maiden season in the Premier League, really. So maybe that's a bit different, but I expect them to challenge for the Premier League and maybe win it, yeah.
Quite often a team will have something happen to them like what happened to Arsenal last season, and that's the learning piece that they need to win the league. Quite often, if you are going for the title again, they'll be better for the experience that they've had last season, won't they?
Yeah, completely, yeah. And again, the disappointment of missing out on the top 4 the season before, and that game that they lost at the Tottenham Stadium was huge. And the way they bounced back from it to go into last season, the one that just finished, to go and challenge City all the way for the top, finishing 2nd, showed you that. And I think we will see this kind of same effect again for this season coming after missing out on the title narrowly last season, to go up and be even better, be stronger, be better collectively, individually, the depth that we mentioned in the squad, having a go at the Champions League. I think all of that would be very important. And let's not forget, there won't be a World Cup in the middle. to disturb a little bit maybe some of the momentum, some of the fitness of some players. We saw that with Saliba going away with France, of course. So, all of that I think would be very important, and it'd be a fascinating season, I think, from an Arsenal point of view.
Final question from me, Julien. Do you think they're done in terms of incomings in the transfer market? I know they've got a heavy focus now on outgoings and trimming the fat of the squad, but do you think they're done in terms of incomings?
I would think so, unless, like you said, a lot of players leave and you need to replace them in a way. Let's say Kieran Tierney leaves, for example, and you think, okay, maybe even if Timber can play right back, left back, even if Kiwior can also play left back, we saw him playing left back as during the preseason friendlies. Maybe you want to get a proper left back in, but apart from that, I think they're pretty settled now. So, like we said, a really good squad with depth, with quality, quantity, with a lot of talent, a lot of personality, leadership. You've got a bit of everything, even if it's still a young squad, because you've signed young players. Havertz is young, Rice is young, Timber is young, but I still think it's a very, very highly rated squad.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Julien, for joining me today to preview Arsenal season. It does look a little bit like we've taken Julien hostage, but we haven't.
Sorry, I just realised.
He's in Australia. I imagine it's very bright there, so he's had to shut. Oh, he's put the light on now, right.
No,
at
it's
the end
the
of
night time for us. Sun is going down. Yeah. So it's Sorry, I just realised too late that the light was off.
Thanks very much for joining me. Always an absolute joy and a pleasure to talk to you, and some excellent information for Arsenal fans there. As I mentioned at the start, we will be doing 6 more of these shows. If you have enjoyed it, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Bit of a podcast revamp this season. We're changing how we do things when the season starts. We'll give you more information nearer the time, but looking forward to doing the whole season of preview shows on WhoScored.com and Edge of the Box. Have a good rest of the day, and as always, please stay safe.